For some anglers, the end of brown trout fishing means that autumn is a melancholy time. But it's really the golden season of freshwater fishing. Cool, wet weather has now arrived, and the waterside is gradually losing its summer richness. And it's a time when many of our salmon rivers see the arrival of huge numbers of fish, anxious to get to the spawning grounds before the onset of winter. But for me, autumn means quietly fishing for roach and bream in a canal, those magnificent artificial waterways which are now so much part of our landscape. And the lowland rivers now come into their own. Slow-moving currents pass through deep pools overhung with willows and alders, ideal spots in which to catch a large chub. It's now September, and our rivers are benefiting from the arrival of cool autumnal weather. This is the River Aire. In its upper reaches, it's a typical fast-flowing trout stream. However, it soon begins to run slower and deeper, and here on the outskirts of Skipton, it provides excellent coarse fishing. This stretch occasionally produces some very good pike, but it's the chub I'm interested in. And before I start fishing, I always like to sort out at least 2 or 3 likely-looking swims. The chub is a splendid, solid fish. It's also extremely cautious, and the merest hint of movement on the riverbank will cause a shoal to simply melt away. Well, I picked for myself what I think is a lovely chubby spot. It's a perfect example of a pool in which chub live. There's lovely overhanging trees, nice weed beds along this near bank, a steady flow of water. It's comfortable quarters for the chub. And those trees that overhang, the roots also penetrate far out into the water, and that's the home for the chub. If it's frightened at all, it will bolt into those roots. And when you hook one, that's the first place it's going to go. So you want reasonably stout tackle, no 2-pound lines, and you must counteract the first rush of that chub, because if it reaches the roots, the battle's over. When it comes to feeding, the chub will eat just about anything. Anglers catch them on worms, cheese, luncheon meat, artificial flies. The list's almost endless. I'm using honey-flavoured bread paste today. Just a little bit of honey mixed in with the bread and then kneaded into a paste with a little water, and that makes an excellent bait for chub. And the slight flavour of the honey makes it, the paste, a very good hook bait. It just seems to attract the fish a little bit more than the ordinary bread paste. The method I'm using today is fairly conventional. It's just an ordinary float tackle being allowed to swim or trot down the river, as we call it, move with the current, taking the bait down to where I think the shoal of fish are lying. But the one slightly unusual thing I do on a river like this is when the float gets to the end of the swim, I don't reel it in, I just hold it for a short while, like that. Allowing it to move for a couple of yards, stopping it, holding it, let it lift in the water and then fall back. And sometimes that's a very good way of catching a chub. Just a little bite on the float, just bobbing up and down. Nothing very positive at the moment, it might just be mouthing it. Slight movement of the float. Missed a bite then. There it goes, and there it is. My word. Oh, look, just keep it away from the roots. Keep it away from the roots. Trying to get into the roots. The first thing a chub will do is dash for the roots of the trees, because it knows that it can get away there. Right, turned it. Oh, oh. Wow, trying to get into the weeds. Bit difficult to keep it out at this distance, but they must do. Now, round. Oh, powerful, powerful. My word. It tried to run straight into the roots and now it's trying to go into the weed bed. Oh, dear me. Just wants this weed here. Whoa, what a chub. Gosh, it's going down. But here it comes. Round, round. Keep a tight hold of it. Look at the power of those fish. Incredible. Oh, and look at the size of them as well. Marvellous. Pulling and pulling. The thing you've got to be careful with the chub is to assume that this very languid, easy approach they have, the way they fight, means that they're ready for the net. Oh, that's a colossal fish. The minute you get down the bank with the net, they're off. And that one run, taking you off balance, and get into the weeds and into the tree roots, and that's the end of the fight. I'll try not to give you a demonstration of that. Wow, look at it go. Just look at it go. See, it almost looked as though it was ready for the net, but not. Look at the size of that. Gosh, that must be the biggest chub I've ever caught. 4 or 5 pounds, magnificent. Honey-flavoured bread paste. An old-fashioned remedy, but my word, it catches chub. And there it is. Wow! Just look at that. Fantastic. And there it is, that chub. What a magnificent fish. It's huge. You can see the head and the body perfectly proportioned. And these very, very large scales. Dark brown on the back, fading into gold and then into silver. And these marvellous fins. Huge fins that enable it to hold its position in the current. And a golden eye, a brilliant golden eye. It's a beautiful fish, but it's uneatable. It's got tasteless, watery flesh, which is wrapped around countless hundred very, very small, sharp bones. But that apart, it's a beautiful fish. Coarse fish feed on aquatic insects and a whole range of small creatures that live in the waterway and along its margins. And for some fish, such as the perch and the pike, small fish provide an important additional source of food. But small fish apart, the angler rarely uses any of the fish's natural food as bait. Now, most of our waterways are heavily fished, and many tons of the angler's bait and ground bait finds its way into the waters each weekend, and it provides food for the fish. Now, these are some of the traditional hook baits used by coarse fish anglers, and they include bread in the form of paste and flake and crust, maggots and worms, sweet corn, luncheon meat, hemp seed, and many others. But there is a small problem. Coarse fish, having been caught, are returned to the water alive, and as such they quickly become educated to the taste and the smell of a bait that spells trouble for them. But now there are many additives and colourings and flavourings, and these enable the angler to alter the colour and the flavour and the smell of a bait in the hope of deceiving the fish. And I'm hoping to put some of these to good use on my next coarse fishing expedition. October's heralded by dank grey conditions. This is the Rochdale Canal at Todmorden, and after decades of neglect it's now being restored. This particular section has a fascinating mixture of industrial and rural settings, all in close proximity to the town. I first fished this canal almost 40 years ago. Then, as a boy who just started fishing, I was bewitched by its crystal clear waters. And in those waters swam huge shoals of perch, which took my bait with great sureness. Well, now I've come back. It's changed, but not very much. And this is going to be a very special day's fishing for me. The fishing here is controlled by the Todmorden Angling Society. Its secretary is Ray Barber, an angler with a profound knowledge of these waters. Today he's using a pole. It's actually a very old method of fishing, now revitalised and gaining great support amongst stillwater anglers. Oh Ray, anything doing?
Not a lot, just about 15 small roach, 1 small bleak and 1 small dace.
Oh, that's not bad. Ray, I see you using a pole. I have no practical experience with a pole, and I'd be grateful if you'd explain it to me.
Well, the main difference between pole fishing and using the rod is that with a pole you don't use a reel. Now this pole in total is 12.5 metres long, that's 9 sections. Today I'm using just 6 sections because I want to fish in the middle of the canal.
So you really can adjust it, put sections in and take them out and fish exactly where you want.
That's
and I suppose at its fullest extent you could almost get over to the reeds there.
Oh, easily there it is.
And how do you fasten the line onto the end?
Well, if I caught a small fish now, I would strike into it, bring it in like this, unship the bottom 2 sections and just swing it to hand like that. And the actual line is attached to a connector at the top of the pole, which in turn is attached to elastic. And the elastic is threaded into the top 2 sections.
It goes down the rod.
And that acts as a shock absorber.
It really imitates the pull off a reel, really.
That's it, that's right.
Yes. Well, look, I'm just going to sit here and watch you, if that's all right with you, because I'd like to pick up 1 or 2 hints about pole fishing.
Right. Find out.
You're really not casting, are you? Because you're virtually sort of putting it there.
Right.
What's the distance of the line between the end of the rod and the float?
About 6 feet.
Yeah. And by just extending the rod, you can push it further and further out if the fish move across to feed.
That's right.
Because it's quite an old-fashioned method, isn't it, really?
Fish, you know.
Oh, good. Good.
Only a small one, I think. Nothing
So
massive.
that's it. You pull it in, you dismantle it like that.
Swing it in like
And
that.
just swing it into hand.
That's
Very
right.
good.
It's a tiny fish, that one. Smallest one I've caught today. And we can be almost immediately back out.
Back in, yeah. So if you're match fishing, you really can move fish, can't you? Even if they're small ones, you can soon stack up a lot of weight in small fish.
Yes.
A strengthening wind forces us to find a more sheltered stretch of the canal. This part is particularly wide, and Ray is having to use the pole's full 12.5 metre length. My method's much more conventional. I'm just using a normal rod and reel, but like Ray, I've opted for small hooks and tiny weights. It's a delicate approach that presents the bait slowly and naturally. This canal is rather unusual in that it's only got very light boat traffic. And that means that for most of the year, the water's crystal clear. And in spring and summertime, that means that the sunlight can penetrate deep into the water, and the weed growth both in the water and along the margins is quite prolific. And that weed growth hosts a whole range of aquatic insects and beetles upon which the fish live. But if you're on a canal where the boat traffic is heavy, particularly between March and September, the water becomes very muddy, the silt is being constantly churned up. And that cuts down the amount of sunlight penetrating the water, the amount of weed growth and the amount of aquatic insects. But nature slightly redressed the balance, because muddy water provides an ideal breeding ground for midges. And on those canals, literally millions of midges breed in the waters. And the larva of those midges, the bloodworm, is now this staple diet for the fish. And on those canals, anglers have to use the bloodworm in order to catch fish. It's a minute little thing, and that necessitates the very smallest hooks. But bloodworms apart, most normal coarse fish baits will work on a canal. And today, Ray's working his way through quite a number of them. Maggots and casters seem to be the favourites. Ray's pole is now really coming into its own. The fish are feeding along a weed bed on the far side of the canal, and it's allowing him to place the bait gently over the top of them.
Something nibbling at it. Small roach. I hope a pike doesn't grab it. Hopefully it's coming, this one. Small roach.
Well, small fish seem to be the order of the day. The larger ones are proving difficult to attract, despite regular ground baiting, but at least we're getting plenty of bites. Another slight movement of the float. These fish are incredibly shy. It doesn't even have, the float doesn't even have to go under. Just a slight movement from side to side indicates that a fish has taken the bait in its mouth, and the minute it feels the slightest resistance from the weight, it will spit it out again. There. Well, one of the babies. That's good for the canal because it shows there's a healthy stock of young fish in it. Slightly hooked baby roach. Lovely. After a steady stream of small fish, Ray finally starts to enjoy a change of fortune.
Could be a bream, that. Could be a bream. This one looks like a bream.
The first reasonable fish of the day. Bream are hardly renowned for their fighting qualities, but when hooked on light tackle they need to be played very carefully. The bream's a gregarious fish that likes to gather in large shoals, and the chances are that if you catch one, others will follow, which accounts for its enormous popularity amongst coarse fishermen. Not a bad fish, and by the end of the day, the two of us managed to put together quite a good catch. Well, Ray, a lovely day and a nice mixed bag.
That's right, Derek.
What have we got amongst them?
Roach, bream, one roach bream hybrid and a perch.
Some perch. Well, that's been absolutely lovely. I've enjoyed myself tremendously, Ray. And all these within 100 yards of the town centre.
That's right, Derek, yes, smashing.
At this time of the year, there's great satisfaction in looking back over the season and reliving some of those precious moments at the waterside. But autumn is a reflective time, highlighted by mellow, sunlit days when the angler is surrounded by the fulsome beauty of autumnal colours. And as the wildlife along the river makes preparations for winter, so I prepare for my final fishing expedition of the season, an expedition I look forward to with great relish. Autumn is now the prime season on most of our salmon rivers for catching a large fish. Spring runs have declined both in size and number, and summer salmon were always relatively small. But the autumn salmon that arrive in our rivers from September onwards now provide the angler with one of the sporting highlights of the year.
2 weeks of rain and gale.
My good friend Barry Davis has invited me onto the River Loon. Heavy rain has brought new life to this river, and the autumn salmon have arrived in considerable numbers. So today our expectations of catching fish are high. Well, Barry, you're going to fish fly to begin with, and I'm going to start spinning, but I'll no doubt quickly change over onto fly because it is a good fly water. These are the flies I brought along. What do you think of these?
Well, they're very, very good for summer salmon, but I think for the autumn fish, and particularly with the water temperature being in the late 40s, we'd be better off with something a bit bigger.
Yes.
If I could suggest something along these lines here, the Monroe Killer would be a good choice today, I think.
Well, that's a Monroe Killer. If you just compare
Yeah.
those two, you can see the difference in size.
Well, there you go.
It's quite a difference,
That's
isn't
right.
it? And that's really because the salmon are far more aggressive at this time of
Absolutely,
year.
yes. They're in more of a hurry to get where they're going, and they seem to be much more ready to take the fly.
Well,
and the bait.
I'll take your advice, Barry. Tight lines.
Screaming reels to you, too.
Yes. Fly fishing for salmon is one of the most joyous yet frustrating forms of angling. Hour after hour can be spent working down through the pools with no reward for your labour. Yet autumn salmon are usually very active and often splash around you as you fish. Barry fishes the fly by simply guiding it round, allowing the current and flow of the water to inject life into it. The salmon fly itself bears no resemblance to any natural insect. It's a lure, which might have a passing similarity to the shrimp and krill, which the salmon feed on whilst at sea. If he's unlucky, the autumn salmon angler can run into some pretty grim weather conditions, but this warm, dry autumn day is perfect. I've elected to fish about 50 yards further down the same pool, where I'm spinning a lightweight Devon minnow. Well, that's got the minnow across into the shallow water, and now it will spin across the channel without me doing much turning of the reel handle. The force of the water will pull it across. And then when it gets immediately below me, I can just increase the speed of the reel and bring the minnow in towards me. The morning's unbroken sunshine has warmed the air, a good sign, suggesting the afternoon might produce a salmon or two. And as we move on to the next pool, I decide to join Barry in fishing the fly. Well, Barry, we've moved down from the first pool, which we fished very thoroughly without success. Whilst we were fishing that, the river dropped 4 or 5 inches.
That's right.
So whereabouts do you think the fish will be lying here?
Well, in this pool, as you can see, it's fairly easily read. If you start at the neck, we're standing reasonably well back, and fish it round the clock from the stones through to the
Yes, that's the
green
rough water,
netting.
yes,
That's right,
yes.
the rough water. And fish the pool all the way down.
Yes.
Wading in perhaps to the knees,
Yes.
and allowing the fly to come through. Lead it round with the rod so that it fishes right through to where
Fine,
you're standing.
right. Now, previously I was spinning. I've changed to fly. When we first started this morning, we had an air temperature of about 45. It's gone up about 15 degrees
That's
to this
right.
time. Does that make any difference to the size of fly I ought to be using?
I think that certainly the floating line might come more
Yes,
to the
yes.
sink tip or the sinking
Yes,
line. And I
yes.
think you stick with a 6, size 6, or even a 4.
On a floating line?
On a floating line, you should do quite well.
Fine. What a lovely autumn day this is. Hardly any wind, nice warm air, and a good flow on the river. I've got my distance about right now, so I can start fishing this little stretch properly. I've worked my way down from the head of this pool. I'm out in the middle of it now. Nothing to show yet, but 1 or 2 fish have moved. Mend the line, that means bring the line upstream so that the fly doesn't drag too quickly, and allow the fly to work round in the water until it gets below me. Ah, now, a fish followed that all the way around and then took a half-hearted attempt right at the very end of the cast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and put this in exactly the same spot and see if we can get it to move again. A lot of salmon fishing, particularly fly fishing for salmon, looks like a very mechanical operation. 1 step down, cast across, fish it round, 1 step down. But every cast, you're likely to contact with a fish.
I'm in. into one, Derek.
Well done.
Barry's persistence with the fly finally pays off. He's hooked what appears to be a fine fish at the head of the pool.
I'm just letting him tire himself out in the current at the moment. Can you take the net, please?
Yes.
He's quite dour at the moment. A reasonable size, I would think. Keep him in that shallow water. I think he's a bit cold. I'm going to get him on the bank as quickly as possible, Derek, if you wouldn't mind. He's a cockfish, but it's not my cup of tea. I'll bring him straight into the head, that's it. Right, we'll have him in the water as quickly as possible. I'm putting him back.
It can be a difficult decision returning a good fish, but when they lose their normal silvery appearance and start to turn red like this one, they're close to spawning and must be released.
Now, just to explain, the fish is very coloured. You can see he's got his tartan breeks on, as they say in Scotland.
Red all the way down. Yeah.
He's got some UDN disease on his nose. He's in good order, and I think what I'm going to put him back, let him go to the spawning grounds. So what I'm going to do is hold the fish. Right, keep him upright, facing upstream. And when he's ready, he'll give a little bit of a kick. So, off he goes.
Barry's quickly back on the water, for the fish are becoming more active, and he must seize the moment.
There are fish everywhere in this pool.
It's now late afternoon, and whilst Barry continues to fish the fly, I again revert to spinning, and it seems to have done the trick. Got a fish. Well, I'm fishing a minnow across the stream here, and just as it came round, I saw the fish roll over and take the minnow, which is an unusual occurrence. I've never seen that happen before. I haven't had a full sight of it yet, but whether it's a bit coloured or not, I don't know yet. Sudden burst of energy. As soon as the fish sees the net, it's away. I'm going to move back a bit now, Barry, to get him on a level with him.
Right, OK.
Right? OK. I think we're just going to put a stop to it, aren't we, really? Right.
Right. Keep your line tight, Derek. That's it. There we go. Well done. Excellent.
A beautiful fish, and one of those angling days which I refer to in my diary as a glimpse of paradise. My year's angling comes to an end amidst the falling leaves and the evening chill of a late autumn day. To me, the greatest delight of angling is its solitude, and it really has to be experienced to be fully appreciated.